This is an oral history interview conducted for the Witness to War Serving a Nation project at Nauset Regional High School in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. For the sake of this interview, please state your full name and community in which you now reside.
You lost me on that one. Charles Daniel Carroll. My community would be the Air Force? Is that what you mean?
No, like the town that you now live in.
Oh, okay. I now live in Dennis, Massachusetts, right there on 6A, just close to the theater, as we were talking to your mom about.
Awesome. Okay. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Shelton, Connecticut. It's the southwestern portion of Connecticut, down in the Bridgeport, Stratford area. I lived really my whole life in that area due to the inflexibility of my dad's profession. He was an optometrist in private practice, so those people don't tend to move around much. Once they're in one spot, they stay there.
Okay, how did you end up on Cape Cod?
I used to spend my every summer here in Cape Cod. Like I said, we're from Connecticut. My kids now think it's hysterical. I can drive around the town of Dennis and say, I spent the summer of 69 in that house, the summer of 70 in that house, the summer of 71 in that house. And as kids, we used to tell our parents, you need to buy something up here. This is nuts. So my parents bought a plot of land in 1969 and got all set to build a house on it. And then 2 years later, somebody else offered my dad a very unique piece of property nearby there, where if you go out the front driveway at a freshwater lake and you go out the back driveway to a saltwater beach, it's very, very unusual. So he purchased that in 72, and then my oldest sister started college in 73. And over the next 20 years, dear old dad paid for 4 bachelor's degrees, 3 masters, and a doctorate. There was no money to build a house. So they entered retirement with 2 pieces of dirt on Cape Cod and no house.
Okay.
Too long an answer.
No, that's good. What was your childhood like?
Pretty normal, I guess, of somebody growing up in the, I'm born in 59, so 60s and early 70s. I was a Boy Scout, I was an Eagle Scout, I played Little League ball. My first job was for the farmer down the street. I think I was 9 years old, and I had to feed and water and collect the eggs from 3,000 chickens every afternoon.
Wow.
So it carries forward. I got chickens still. I guess it stuck with me. It's contagious.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
I initially wanted to be a doctor. My dad was a doctor. My sister's a doctor. I used to work at a hospital, and that's kind of what I thought. It didn't work out that way.
So why did you choose to be in the military?
Well, as I said, I am a very late bloomer. I am the last one. For you name it, baby teeth, marriage, I'm the last one, always. So I ended up going to college at 17, thinking I was going to go to pre-med. And I knew I wasn't ready to go to college. I wanted to take a year off. My parents wouldn't hear of it. So I started out as a 17-year-old kid majoring in beer drinking and living at the fraternity house. So obviously my grades reflected that. So I had a friend of the family say, your bachelor's degree is what a high school diploma was 50 years ago. Just get one. Doesn't have to be anything special. So I became a history major just because I love history. I could read it. I just could read the book and take the test, and that was good. And I enjoy understanding why things are the way they are, because something people don't talk about happened 8,500 years ago. I find that very interesting. So the second half, it's actually kind of funny. The second half of senior year, I'm in a full-blown panic. I'm going to have to grow up and be an adult here real soon and get a job. And I thought I didn't think I was ready for that. I'm a late bloomer. I wanted to hide in school for a couple more years. So I was in the guidance counselor's office filling out the application, take the LSAT. I thought I'd go to law school. And some guy with a uniform sat down next to me and he goes, what are you going to do next year? I gave him a real sophisticated 20-year-old, I don't know. He said, did you ever think about flying jets? And I went, nope. He said, you got any flying time? I said, nope. He said, do you think you could pass this physical? And I said, yeah, I think so. And essentially, with a few other minor deviations, we talked for about 4 hours, and he basically said, sign here. So it was exciting. You know, I was some kid that, I'd traveled a fair amount with my parents, but not like around the world or anything. And this guy is talking about flying supersonic and upside down and blowing things up, and yeah, that sounds cool. So.
How did your family react to your decision to enlist in the military?
Well, I come from a very pro-military family. My dad was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. My mother's cousin's a West Point grad. So they were delighted. The only thing that was amiss with them is they said, "Why didn't you look at one of the service academies? Why did we pay for 4 years of private college for you to join the military?" I said, "Well, it's probably a maturity thing. I didn't think I had the discipline maybe for one of the service academies, and maybe in retrospect, I think that would have been good for me. Seeing I was paying student loans till I was 35, it probably would have been very good for me."
What was your specific job in the Air Force?
I was a pilot in the Air Force. I started out in fighters. I flew fighters for about 13 years, and then transitioned over to heavies. It was a painful transition on my part. I was trading in a Formula One race car for a school bus. But it was just a matter of how the political climate had gone. Once the Berlin Wall came down, there was a tremendous shrinkage of forces in the United States. And they were telling my age group, you can either have a desk or a big one. What do you want? So I think anybody would take a big airplane over a desk.
Yeah.
Just an opinion.
Where were you stationed?
A little bit everywhere. Initial training was in Texas for officer school. Then I went to Arizona for flight training, and then I did fighter lead-in New Mexico. Then A7 school was again in Arizona, and then after that, flying with different airplanes, I was stationed in Ohio, New Mexico again, Arizona, North Carolina, New Jersey, and then Massachusetts. So I have kids with birth certificates from Ohio, Arizona, and North Carolina. So.
Okay, what was the environment like where you were stationed in the Air Force and all of those areas?
I think it's a lot more of a business than people realize. It's not like you're living in a tent and people are yelling at you and you're getting muddy boots all the time. I showed up at work at 7 o'clock in the morning with a clean uniform and worked out of an air-conditioned office. So it's not anything like you might see on MASH or some of these other programs. I really had, it's probably one of the reasons I lasted so long, is I had a wonderful work environment. I had great people I work with, and I stayed with it for almost 34 years. So I guess that tells you I liked it.
Yeah. What was the most challenging weather conditions you faced?
Oh boy, we were deploying over to Incirlik, Turkey, and we flew 8 F-16s from Luke Air Force Base, air refueled through the night over the Atlantic, and it was full of thunderstorms and rain and hail. When you're air refueling, you're flying the airplane looking up at the tanker taking gas. There's lights on the bottom of the tanker that tell you to move up or down or do that. There were times the clouds were so thick I couldn't see the tanker, although it was 30 feet above me. All I had was the pipe coming out of the cloud, and I'm just hanging on the pipe to get enough gas to make it across the Atlantic. But it was, it's most times the weather prediction has gotten a lot more accurate in recent years. And I think today, if they'd known what that weather was going to be, we would have canceled the ocean crossing for a day.
Was there anyone in particular you had a strong bond with?
Oh, there were a lot of mentors that I had. Colonel Steve Miller was a F-4 pilot in Vietnam, was one of my squadron commanders in New Mexico. He was awesome. He was the epitome of work hard, play hard. He was a good guy.
Describe a typical day in the military.
Well, a typical day would be most fighter bases have a morning go and an afternoon go. Usually you're on one, not the other, but sometimes you can be on both. But it would be arrive at the squadron, check in, get a cup of coffee, check the weather, check the NOTAMs, which is notices to airmen. These are little sniglets of information that come out hourly that say that the airspace over Hyannis is closed to all traffic because the president's here, or something like that. You check the NOTAMs, see how it affects your flight, and then you go into a briefing for about an hour. You talk about what you're going to do, where you're going to go, how you expect to accomplish your objectives. Go to they call it the shoot shop. Now it's called life support, or now it's called they change their name every couple of years. Now it's aircrew flight equipment or something. Where you go get your parachute harness, your G suit, and strap in. Most fighter sorties are about an hour. Either when I was flying the F-16, it's either dedicated to air or air-to-ground. And then you come back and you debrief it. And the debriefing is not, hey, you did good, we did well today, we blew the target up, that's good, okay, see you later. It's a detailed frame by frame. They'll take each airplane has a movie camera in it, for better things, that observes the upfront controller and your radar display. And you'll sit there and put them in the machine and sync them up so they're real time, and you go through the mission frame by frame. So for instance, let's say somebody got into our formation undetected and tried to attack us. We could back it up and go, oh, there it is, right there. You, number 3, you had the low search. You didn't see this guy. And so it's meticulously picked apart. And I'd say most of the learning that goes on, it's in the debrief, because in the airplane it happens so fast, you really don't even have time to think about it, because now you're doing something else. So a lot of the real learning is done in the debrief. And then and you head home.
How did this routine change throughout the years?
The technology has changed everything. It used to be, when I first started out dropping bombs, you had what's called an iron reticle. It was strictly a bunch of concentric circles with a pinpoint in it, and you dialed it over, and then knowing what your airspeed, altitude, and dive angle was, when you released the bomb, it was kind of I think it's going to go there. Now they have what's called a CCIP pipper. That's a constantly computed impact point. And in your HUD, heads-up display, or here in front of you, it puts a symbol on the ground where at any second, if you release the bomb, that's where it's going to go. And you have a computer that's taking in airspeed, altitude, dive angle, barometric pressure, ballistics of the bomb, and multiplies that computation 50 times a second and says this is where it's going to go. So it's changed everything. It used to be when you crossed an ocean, once you were about 10 miles offshore, you never saw another airplane again, because you're so far away from everything. Now with GPS, everything is so tight that you see airplanes all the time crossing the ocean, because they compute the winds every day, and they say this is the most economical way to get to Europe right now because the tailwind is best or the headwind is least, and everybody wants to be on that route. So everybody goes that same way. And now, like I said, it used to be you wouldn't see another airplane for 6-7 hours while you're crossing the ocean. Now it's about every 10 minutes here's a speck on the horizon, and 2 minutes later it's going right over the top of you, because the navigation now is so tight. It's too tight. Everybody's in the same spot.
Do you think that it has gotten easier to fly and be in the Air Force since this development of technology?
Oh, absolutely. It used to be. It's kind of funny is that in my last few years, I was flying with new co-pilots that had grown up with the new technology, and I didn't. It used to be you'd get instructions from the controller. They'd say to send, you're cleared from here to this point. Let's say the point is chair over there. You're at 33,000 feet. They want you to send and maintain 10,000 feet, crossing chair at 10,000. So this one instance, they gave us a snap vector like that, and it was pretty busy what we're already doing, and they want us to lose like 22,000 feet and 15 miles, and I'm going, okay, 22,000 divided by 15, and I'm thinking in my head, and I tell the guy, just start coming down 2,000 feet a minute, we'll be all right. He starts laughing at me. He goes, no, we need to come down at 1,859 feet per second, because he'd already put it in the computer and gotten an answer. It's yes, it makes it's taken the workload off the pilots big time, and that's in many ways reflected by the aircraft that you see today. Is that it used to be in World War II, a large bomber or transport would have a crew of like 10. You'd have a flight mechanic, a radio operator, a navigator, a bombardier, a pilot, a co-pilot, a flight engineer. And as technology's gotten better, big airplanes traditionally lose a crew member about every 10 to 15 years. So even 20 years ago, a big airplane had a pilot, a co-pilot, and a flight engineer. The flight engineer's gone now. Everything's all automated. And we're at the stage now where we don't need the pilots. But I think that the flying public would never get into an airplane flown by robots. But we're pretty much there now.
What were your living conditions like?
I was in the Air Force.
Yeah.
And the Air Force is made fun of by all the other services because of how nice our accommodations are. While the other services may be in, 40 people to a room this big and gang showers, we were more like the Marriott and the hot breakfast. So I can't complain about the accommodations.
What did you do in your off time?
I like to fish. I had a lot of friends who did a lot of civilian sport flying. I couldn't bring myself to do that because it's just so expensive. I mean, if you want to go out and rent an airplane, it's ungodly expensive. So I tried to adapt to wherever I was. When I got to my base in New Mexico, it was kind of desolate. Alamogordo, New Mexico is where they exploded the first nuclear device. So if you can imagine, they didn't pick Philadelphia or New York to explode it because they want to make sure nothing got hurt. So they did it out in Alamogordo. So what I would normally do when you got there is find out what the locals did, try to immerse myself in that. When I got to New Mexico, they said, you buy something with four-wheel drive, a dirt bike, and a gun. So that's what I did. And that's what we did.
What was it like for your family to move around with you?
I was lucky in that I got married in what people would consider later in life, against that whole late bloomer thing. I'm always the last one. So I was almost just shy of 33 when I got married. So I already had a 13-year career behind me already. So when you move with young kids, it's not that big a deal. Their world is their pets, their toys, and their parents. So they thought it was kind of fun. Here come the moving guys again, and we got all these boxes, and we're going to move. Once my kids started getting older, it becomes harder, and that's when I put my roots down and said, I'm not moving again. I gave up rank to stay. I mean, they wanted me to move. I had a freshman in high school and a senior in high school, and they wanted me to move across the country to be a full colonel, and I said, I can't. They're doing too good. I'm not going to disrupt their lives. So,
what was the most difficult decision you had to make while serving?
Probably to leave the service. I loved the Air Force. I had a great time. I would have stayed for 20 years, but the Berlin Wall came down, and they were telling my age group, you're going to get one more assignment in a fighter, and after that, you're going to be flying a desk for the rest of your life. And I had an offer to leave the active duty and go to the Air Force Reserves. They said they won't force you to move. Come on out here to Phoenix, Arizona, and I said sure. But it was tough. The Air Force and the military in general is a very it's a very protected environment. It's good pay. It's extremely secure. The best healthcare in the world, and you feel like you're accomplishing something. It really did. That's what I miss now. Yeah. Okay.
What did you miss most about civilian life when you were serving?
I really didn't have any regrets that way. There were a couple times I had to miss Christmas, but I figured, well, it's just that's what I do. I kind of felt I was in the same shoes as a fireman or police officer. Not everybody can go home at Christmas, so that was tough.
What was your happiest memory from serving?
That would probably be tough. That would probably be watching Saddam Hussein come down. We were deployed to Burgas, Bulgaria. We set up an air refueling base there, refueling the assets over Iraq. And we were standing in the ops center. We were watching. They put the rope around that big statue of Saddam. They pulled it down, and all the people were dancing on him. And we thought we had liberated Iraq. We thought we were giving those people a chance at what we have. It's that's one of the reasons I wish our young people would do some type of mandatory service, be it the Peace Corps, the military, work in an inner city hospital, do something to see what goes on out there, because we take so much for granted in this country. It's unbelievable. You don't when back in 1944 there was a famous mission, or 44 or 45, a famous mission called Operation Frantic. You can Google it, but it's where the fighters went with the bombers all the way to the targets, and they could not make it back to England because they didn't have enough gas, and they recovered into a number of bases in Eastern Europe that fell under the Soviet bloc after the war. Well, after the Berlin Wall came down and we were playing nicey nice with the Russians, we had a Operation Frantic reunion where we flew over to their base in Mirgorod in the Ukraine. And the next year they got to fly to our base and they came to visit us. And the first thing, it was sad. Those guys to come over here had to be married with kids. They were so afraid these guys were going to defect when they got over here, that's what they put a limit on. And the things that they were in awe of, you and I take for granted every day. We had one guy was bragging. We had him in the dorms at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, which is basically, they're like a nice college room, is what they are. So one guy was amazed that he got up to use the toilet at 3 a.m. and it flushed. He thought that was amazing that there was water pressure at 3 o'clock in the morning. The other guy was telling his buddy he couldn't believe that it had unlimited hot water, and he wanted to see when we would run out of hot water. So this one guy got in the shower at 6 o'clock in the morning. He gave up at 8 o'clock. And I know we think it's funny, but this is what goes on in other parts of the world, and people don't. You should see those guys. We took them to Walmart, and they went down the paper good aisle, and they saw the toilet paper thing, and they brought over a big cargo airplane so they could bring back whatever they wanted. They cleaned out the entire thing of toilet paper. They're high-fiving each other. They thought they just happened to get in right after the truck came in, and they cleaned out all the toilet paper. So we take a massive amount of toilet paper out to the trucks, and they're still high-fiving each other. And we said, "Come here, I want to show you something." And they're like, "What are you going to look at?" "We're going to go look at the toilet paper aisle." And no, we took it all. High five, high five, high five again. And we took them down and back down to the toilet paper aisle. And it had been completely restocked. Didn't look like they'd even touched it. And these guys' mouths were agape, and they're like, "But we took it all." I said, "No, this is the United States. You can't take it all." And so it's just, it's stupid little things. It's funny, we giggle about it, but they think unlimited hot water is unheard of. Toilets that flush at 3 in the morning, and so that would be my wish, if I could, if it's our young people could see that and understand what you have over here and what you're given. So,
what was your proudest moment while serving?
I think, did we just talk that? I think we did.
Yeah.
I think that was
the same thing.
Yeah, it would be where the Berlin Wall coming down. Actually felt we did something when the fall of Saddam Hussein, and we were over. Like I said, we were over in Burgas at that time doing it. Made it feel like we did something.
What was your darkest memory from the war?
I do remember I had a physical on September 8th of 2001. I think that's a Saturday. 9/11 was that Tuesday. And as a pilot, you always worry about your hearing, your vision, all that stuff. And I passed all those things. I just had to go in and see the doctor. And he turns around, he pokes me 3 times in the belly, and he goes, "You're grounded. You're DNF, duty not to fly out flying. He said, you have an umbilical hernia. And I'm like, I thought I was out of the umbilical business like 45 years ago. I had no idea what he's talking about. So they would diagnose it, but they won't fix it. So Monday, September 10th, 2001, I literally got out the Yellow Pages and started dialing. I looked up surgery in the Yellow Pages. I called them up and said, do you take Blue Cross Blue Shield? They said, yes. Will you fix an umbilical hernia? And they go, yes. They said, we'll see you like 3 weeks next Thursday. Well, the next day was September 11th. And, I watched these airplanes crash into buildings and things like that. And I'm grounded. I can't do anything. It was like, here it is. The game started and I can't play. So it was pretty funny. I called the Wednesday, the 12th. I called down and talked to the doctor. I said, can I speak to the doctor? And she said, he's really, really busy. And I said, I can sit here on hold all day, whatever you want. So he finally gets on. I'm on hold for like 45 minutes. The doctor gets on and goes, I said, look, I've got an umbilical hernia. And I said, I am worthless to my country until you fix this thing. And he goes, what are you doing right now? I said, coming to see you? He goes, yep. So I went down there. He goes, yep, you got an umbilical hernia. We have to take blood to see if we can go under a general anesthesia. He called me Thursday and said, I'll cut you tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. And we'll get you on your way. That was pretty cool. But, I had an appointment in like 3.5 weeks and the world's exploding. So I told him, I said, I am worthless to my country until you fix this. So.
How did you feel when leaving and coming back home?
Mine was different. I think you'll get a lot of answers from guys if you talk to somebody from Vietnam and they were over there for a year and came back. I did it for almost 34 years. And the only reason I left when I did is because I was kicked out. They said, you're too old. There's the door. I mean, not in so many words, but at the particular program I was in, when you turn 56, you're booted. You're done. And I turned 56 on September 27th of 2015, and they said, bye-bye. So that was, it was bittersweet. It's, I would have stayed. I really enjoyed it. I felt that we were doing something. It's, I ended up flying KC-10s and then C-5s in the end, and that was kind of fun because whatever went on in the world, you got to be part of it. So we'd watch the USS Cole getting bombed on the TV, and we'd literally just sit there waiting for the phone to ring. And usually about 6-7 hours later, the phone would ring, said, how many crews can you have ready to go by, 6 o'clock tomorrow morning? And it was, we'd take bets on it, when the phone's going to ring. And that part I miss. I used to, my mom used to ask me, I'd say I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks. She'd say, well, where are you going? I said, well, technically I can't tell you, but if you turn on CNN, you'll figure it out. So.
What experience from your service affects you the most today?
What experience affects me the most? Maybe it's just a sense of responsibility and being responsible for your own actions. And I maybe sometimes judge things by saying, look at somebody's situation and said, you can fix your own situation. You can pull yourself out of this hole. And maybe that's what I learned from the military, is to be, self-sufficient. I don't know if that's quite what you're looking for. I don't know. Somebody's trying to get me.
So we're on our final questions. So describe how your life has changed since serving.
My belly's gotten bigger. It's a lot more relaxed. It's nice. I'm retired. It's nice to be able to sleep in, read the entire newspaper with the cat on my lap with a cup of coffee every morning. But I think I've learned to appreciate what's been given me and what I had. It's definitely slowed down a lot. I work pretty hard over the summer. We have a summer business now, but once the boat's out of the water, I got time for everything else. My neighbors and family and friends really like it because they know Chip is always available. Doesn't matter what they need. Somebody's getting their chimney sweeped, and the guy can only come at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday. And they said, hey, Chip, can you be at my house and get this guy at 4 o'clock on Tuesday? My daughters are like, "Hey, Dad, can you look at my car? There's something wrong." I now have time for anything and everything, which is kind of cool.
So, can you describe your current job on the boat?
We bought a fishing business. I don't know if you're familiar with the Albatross. It runs out of Sassuat Harbor, but it's actually kind of a dream come true. I used to go on this boat as a kid. I used to take my kids on it when they were kids, and we were paying customers on the 26th of August in '05, and one of the mates made an offhand comment the boat was for sale, and I was like, this thing's for sale? Because at 56, although I couldn't do my job anymore, I really didn't think I was ready for a lemonade in the front porch rocker. I needed something to do. And this is fun. We take people largely on vacation with young kids out fishing, some of them for the first time. And, you're not taking a bunch of grown men who are going to shoot the captain unless everybody catches a trophy fish. These are mostly young kids, and if they're excited they caught a skate, they got a sea monster, and they're sculpin, or this thing's got horns, and it's fun. It's a good time.
So our final question, if someone young is going to the Air Force, what advice would you give them?
What advice would I give them? They wanted to join the Air Force right now, a young person, like let's say right out of high school, I would tell them to try very hard to be a load master on a C-5 or a boom operator in a KC-10. When I was 19, 20 years old, summers during college, I was cutting grass at the Harry B. Bronson Country Club. These kids now, 18, 19, 20 years old, are traveling to Greenland and Germany and Japan and Korea and seeing the world in a way that I never did, until I was much older and joined the Air Force. But I would, that's what I would tell them to do.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah.
I hope that's what you need.
Yeah.